Hey Monarchs, this is Mrs. Dutro, and today we are going to talk about checklist conversations versus academic conversations. And your essential question for today is, how can I successfully participate in an academic conversation in order to deepen the learning of myself and my peers? Please write this down in the essential questions section of your Cornell notes. So I recruited the help of Mrs. Peterson earlier today to help me to model between a checklist conversation and an academic conversation. So before we watch this short conversation that Mrs. Peterson and I had on the prompt, how does the movie Finding Nemo explore the concepts of risk and reward? Which character best exemplifies each concept? And as you watch this conversation between the two of us for the next 55 seconds, I want you to think about what we could do to improve our discussion in order to improve our learning. Well, risk is when you do something that could end badly, and reward is when you get something good.
Yeah.
So which character does what?
I
guess Nemo. What about Nemo?
What does he risk?
Well,
he doesn't listen to his dad.
Oh, he touches the butt.
Gross.
Okay. And then reward. Who's reward?
Dory's the reward.
I think Marlin's the reward.
No, he's the mean guy.
Can they both just be rewards?
I guess.
Okay. Okay, we're done.
Yay.
Yay! All right. So, what did you think of that conversation? Did it sound familiar? Did it really get down to the nitty-gritty? Was it a good conversation? An academic conversation? Was it clear that we were learning from each other? That's my experience, is that most of you will have conversations like that. And those aren't the best conversations for learning. So, before you watch Mrs. Peterson and I engage in an academic conversation on the same prompt, I want you to first take some quick notes on the different elements that create a strong academic conversation. So the first one I want you to know is posing. So academic conversations usually start with somebody posing a new idea or concept. So that's when someone says, well, I think this. And then we need to dive deeper into that concept. So we see that when we clarify, and that is when we develop a new understanding, or we develop our basic understanding of the ideas that were developed while posing. And clarifying happens quite a bit throughout academic conversations because that's when we clarify our ideas for others. That's when we clarify our understanding of ideas for others to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then the next element is support. And so when we support, that's when we refer to textual evidence, your English teacher's favorite thing. When we refer to evidence from the text to help to explain how our idea is a strong one. And so if we're having a discussion in class, then you're going to refer to evidence from whatever text we've read recently, or you might refer to evidence from a text that you've read outside of class that further supports the idea. And then the next thing that we're going to do after we support our idea with evidence from the text is synthesize step. And that's when we explore the connection between the evidence and the idea. Now, we may see a piece of evidence and we may say, oh, this is relevant. I know this connects somehow, but I'm not 100% sure how yet. I still need to figure that out. And that's why we have these conversations, to help you with that synthesis, to help you to explore that connection. So the synthesis step is where we continue to discuss how the text relates to the idea. And then after synthesis, that's when we usually evaluate. And we evaluate which idea is the strongest of the ideas. So if we have multiple ideas flying around the conversation for one prompt, we still need to figure out which one is strongest and which one that we like the most. Or you might be evaluating in order to effectively answer the question. So that's when you decide which of these ideas best supports the question, or which of these ideas best answers the prompt, or which of these ideas do I agree with the most? Do I prefer? You may not always agree with what other people say. That happens all the time. That's a fact of life. So that's why we have to evaluate the different ideas to see how we really feel about it. And then finally, the last element that we're going to discuss today is questioning, and that can happen at any point during the discussion. It can happen between the posing and the clarification stage. It can happen between clarification and support. It can happen between support and synthesis, or between synthesis and evaluation. Questioning should happen throughout. And when we question, that is when we either help ourselves or will help others to deepen the idea or to stay focused on the prompt. Sometimes, in order to clarify, we have to ask our group members a question to help deepen our understanding of a topic. And so questioning and clarification can go hand in hand, but it can also go hand in hand with evaluation. It can happen between any of the steps of academic conversations. Now, I want you to see an academic conversation that Mrs. Peterson and I had on the same prompt about Finding Nemo. And I want you to consider how these texts helped us to deepen our understanding of the text, and how they also helped us to answer all parts of the prompt. So I think that you can't have reward without risk. So I think first we have to explore that idea of reward only existing when there is some element of risk before we can decide which character would fall into that.
Okay. So you have to risk something to get a reward, but you could also have a consequence. That could be a punishment.
Yes, but that's why it's a risk, because you could have a consequence. So with risks, you're risking having to have either a reward or a consequence.
Which makes it worth why you would risk it. So so what you're saying is that in order to have a reward, you have to have had some option of maybe loss or consequence?
Perhaps. To have a reward that's worth having.
Okay, so in Finding Nemo, who risks what, and what are the consequences, and what are the rewards?
Well, I think there are different types of risks. So we see something when he goes to touch the butt, but then he has a consequence of getting captured by the people.
But does he know that that's a consequence, and what's the reward of him setting out to do that? Do you remember?
I think the reward was to, he was looking for the social praise from his classmates because he was new to school and he wanted to be cool and look good for them.
Oh, like to be brave. He was trying to be brave,
yeah,
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I think that you also have characters who have to risk things, but then they're rewarded for it.
So like Marlin, where he risks getting lost and going away from the anemone. I'm as bad Nemo.
Anemone.
I'm as bad as Nemo. But he risks leaving his home, which is something he's very scared to do.
Yeah.
In the unknown, to go find his son, which would be the reward, is getting his son back.
Yeah, but I think it's more to it than that, because his reward is also that he needs to trust his son. Because at the end, Nemo wants to risk something again to save all the fish caught in the net. Okay. And he wants to go, and he wants to go, and Marlin doesn't want to let him, but he learns to at certain points. And so he allows Nemo to go, and Nemo tells all the fish to swim down, and they're successful.
Okay, so he's got several rewards then. He's got getting his son back, and he's got learning to trust his son. There's also the reward of the relationship that builds with Dory.
Absolutely, yeah. And Dory, I think, is there to show him that risks are okay, that it's okay to take risks, and that you can't shy away from risks completely, or else you won't get any rewards.
Okay.
So then Dory could maybe be risk and reward. And then who would be risk and who would be reward of Nemo and Marlin?
If Nemo and Marlin are risk,
Could we make an argument for them to both be one and the other? For Nemo to represent risk and Nemo to also represent reward, and same with Marlin?
well, yeah, I think because Nemo would be the reward for somebody else's risk.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess you could be risk. You could be the risk and you could be the reward.
Yeah. I think we could talk about this for days if we really wanted to.
We don't want to.
You're welcome. How did that conversation go? It was much deeper. We explored the concepts much more thoroughly. We came to different conclusions. We didn't always agree with each other. Our disagreements helped us to reform and to reshape. So I want you to think about what you can do the next time I ask you, or any other teacher asks you, to turn and talk to a partner about something, to have one of those academic conversations. So remember, that is posing new ideas, clarifying in order to deepen your understanding of the idea, questioning in order to further clarify your understanding of an idea, or even to draw connections between ideas, support from the text in order to make it relevant to what you are learning and in order to add strength to your arguments or your claims, synthesis, which is where you connect your quotes and your evidence from the text to your idea into the prompt, and evaluation, which is where you decide which of the ideas was the strongest idea, the one worth exploring further. Please make sure that you chunk your notes. Please write a possible test question for each chunk, and make sure you highlight the main ideas and key terms, and finally write a summary at the end of your notes by answering the essential question in 4 to 5 sentences. And if you have questions, you can email me at kelly.dutro@aps.edu, or you can visit my website at mrsdutro.org, and I will see you tomorrow. Do you want to go first, or should I?
You can.
Miss Peterson doesn't like to be on the camera, you guys.
But I miss you all.